Greetings, I am Tom Earl. On this week's episode, we talk poetry for incarcerated youth with Matthew Cuban. Check it out.
Woo!
Greetings, I am Tom Earl, and this is my year of grace. We know you could be anywhere, so the fact that you are here today sharing your greatest gifts, your time and energy means the world to me. I hope you know that in this moment, just as you are loved, you are appreciated, and you are valued. As you may see, hear, sense, or intuit, I am not alone. I have an amazing guest. He goes by the name of Matthew Cuban. Crowd goes wild. How are you today?
I'm good, brother. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. I really appreciate it.
So for the one person who lives on Mars, who doesn't know who you are, can I introduce them to you via your bio?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
let's do it. Here we go. I'm known for reading bios. This is
the bread and butter right
here. We go.
Okay. I showed up today for this. This is what it's about.
Matthew Cuban Hernandez is a poet, speaker, performance coach from Jacksonville, Florida.
Duval.
There it is. I was hoping that was going to happen. He has toured as far as Abu Dhabi and in nearly every major city in the United States and Europe, performing, teaching, and coaching. This is where you say poetry.
Oh, poetry. Poetry.
You don't have your bio memorized?
And life. I don't know this guy you're talking about.
A teaching artist for nearly 10 years. That's a decade.
Yeah.
Matthew has spent the last 4 years working in youth detention centers across Los Angeles County. He has opened for artists such as Wu-Tang and has performed for platforms such as BuzzFeed, NPR, and Tom Earl's The Celebration. It's in the bio. It really
it's in the bio. It's right there.
Matthew is also a 3-time Southern Fried Poetry Slam champion.
Southern Fried?
There it is. An award-winning poetry coach. Cuban's favorite activity is making people feel great. Sometimes he does this through his poetry. And he is the author of, which we are here to talk about today, the book 3032.
Woo!
Yes, indeed. That's amazing.
That was the best reading of a bio anyone's ever done for me.
Anytime you need it.
Yeah, I will not live up to any of this hype.
Yes, you will. So a bio can only, really capture so much of who somebody is. Mm-hmm. So what can't the bio tell us about who you are that you can?
Oh, man, the bio. The bio shows you Superman, and in actuality, I'm just Clark Kent. I might even just be Jimmy Olsen. I'm not even a superhero. I'm just a guy on the camera for my DC fans. The Marvel references will be later in the video, I promise. But no, I think what it tells you is that I'm somebody who's a first generation American in my family. I'm somebody who is a quad racial person. I'm somebody who deals with imposter syndrome and with crippling depression at times. And I'm human, and I think sometimes what bios show you is like these are all the things that are great about a person, and those is what I think a snapshot of a person should be. But I also like to show people that I'm just a regular dude, and anything that I have done great is easily attainable by anybody listening, by anybody who wants to try to achieve as much of their greatness and their potential as they got. So that's a little bit more of what the bio doesn't tell you.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
How come that's important for you to share with people, that I'm not the Superman, I'm the Clark Kent? Why is that important for you?
Well, I know those were like the things that like made me feel more attached to the artists that I was watching. Those were the things that that made me feel invested into their work, and also just made me be able to see more of myself in their work. You know, I look at artists like Kendrick Lamar or Jay-Z, or, you know, just growing up and seeing artists talk about the difficulties they've dealt with. I mean, like, even as like comedians, like, you know, Richard Pryor, George Carlin, they talk about the negative things that they've gone through in their life, and all these things that really make them great. It's kind of like, you know, Saul Williams once said, you know, like, the difference between hip hop and poetry is, in hip hop you talk about all these things that you are proud of, or like that you're machismo about, you know, and then in poetry you talk about those vulnerabilities. It's kind of like that, like, ending scene in 8 Mile, you know, where he's like, yeah, y'all beat me up, yeah, I'm still out here, whoop-de whoop whoop, and like, and in showing all his vulnerabilities, he was the most powerful dude there. So, you know, I feel like it humanizes who you're talking to, who you're looking at, and who you're reading, and that's something that I want my students to get, and that's something that I want the people who follow my work to get. That I'm an accessible person. No matter how large I get, I'm still easily able to reach out to. Yeah.
You mentioned vulnerability.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit more about that. I got you.
Vulnerability. Yeah. You know, where to start, you know? I think it's interesting that there are a lot of poets in the community that deal with vulnerability or imposter syndrome, or things where they just don't feel like they are who they try to manifest on stage, because that's what we so actively do as poets or as performers. We're constantly on stage as this being of like, I'm holding it together, or sometimes we're falling apart, and I think like that's kind of what's dope about it. But I think like vulnerability is everything. It's the conduit of growth. You know, if you're not exploring and digging deep into your vulnerabilities, then you might not be growing. You know, and I really live by that, and so I've tried to spend a lot of times going into my most vulnerable places and really just trying to dig it up and talk about it, and being like, why do I feel these ways? What are the things that are making me feel this ways, and how can I combat it, love it, or improve it, you know?
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So take us back. How did a young Matthew discover this thing called spoken word?
So that's great. These questions are awesome.
Thank you.
So I discovered spoken word. I discovered poetry when I was probably around like 13.
Wow.
I started... you know, like probably most people that write poetry start, you know, I was in my English class and they were like, all right, y'all got to go write a poem for homework. And so I was like, damn, you know, I was like, all right. So I went home and I wrote this really cheesy poem, looking back on it. But at the time I was like, this is that fire. So I went into class and I spit it, and everybody in my class was like, oh, that's that fire.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
I just got mad love. And like a bunch of homies kept like, you know, in between class period, they'd be like, hey, spit the poem you spit in the English class. Wow. And they would bring other homies, be like, oh, you know, and basically be telling them like, oh, I heard this in English class by this, like, and then so I had all these people coming up and telling me to spit it over and over again. And I had never received any attention like that. You know what I mean? Like, before, the attention that I would get was like, I just beat the hell out of somebody, or I just got into a fight, or I just threw a desk, or I just cussed out the teacher, or I just, you know, it was always negative ways that I was receiving attention. And this was a way that like people was really coming up to be like, oh, you know, people that I thought like were like the cool kids in school, whatever, was like really coming up and being like, yo, that's dope. And that just like opened up a whole world for me. And I was like, oh, word, like, okay, I'm gonna write a few more of these and see what's up, and then tell people like, check it out. And so yeah, young me started around like 13, and then around 15, I went to a big poetry festival called Southern Fried, which is like my family reunion. Obviously, I've been going there for more than half my life now, and it's just been this beautiful place where poets would come from all over the country and just be in one communal place. And it was really like a family reunion, and a place where you could grow, a place where you could fail, a place where you could be yourself unapologetically. And there were a few of those spaces in the city that I grew up in Jacksonville. So yeah, that was like, I just got hooked. I got turned out. By that time, I was like, oh, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. And here I am. Yeah.
So what made you decide to go the route of and maybe it wasn't an either or, but the route of spoken word over, poetry applied to music?
I don't think I really went down a different, a specific route, It's been different stages of my career and my life that I think my poetry has evolved. There was a time where I was like, if I put this to music or something, nobody's going to care. Nobody's going to want to hear this. Yeah. And then I got the nerve to do it. Or I got the nerve to like just say, oh, I finished a composition notebook. I filled out every page in it. And it was just baby steps that would build into things. And it got to the point where, I've put out 5 albums of poetry over music. And now I'm like, okay, well, if I'm going to do music, I'm going to do hip hop. You know what I mean? And so I put out my first hip hop album at the beginning of 2018 and just been seeing a lot of success come back from it. But then at the same time, I'm like, okay, well, then if the musicality is going all music, then the poetry needs to go all poetry. And so though I don't like the term between like page poetry and stage poetry, because I feel like the best poems can do both. Yeah. I've tried to have that really be a focal point in my work, which is if this is something that sounds good when I perform it on stage, I also want it to be something that resonates and is easily accessible and has that same impact when you read it. And so that's why I put in a lot of work into this book. Especially I want the word accessible. I think so many times when we see or read poetry books, the language is not accessible to everyone. There's so much language in these books where it's like you can tell what level of education they have or how many degrees they have somewhere about mid-book. You're like, there's like 10 words in this poem that you are excluding a whole population from. And that's not to say to dumb down your work. I think there's something different between what we see with like Instagram poetry, no offense, you know what I'm saying, versus like what you see with like really quality written poems. And like simplicity is like one of my favorite languages. Like honesty is my favorite form of poetry. And I constantly say that with my students. I'm like, just be honest. I don't care. I don't care what you write about. Just be honest. And there's people I got students that I work with that have never written a poem a day in their life that could wipe their floor with some quote unquote award-winning poetry books. Just because the language is so raw and honest. Yeah.
I feel like you started a poem in there. Simplicity.
Yeah, I was just going.
It's my favorite language. Honesty is my favorite form of poetry.
Yeah.
That's the beginning of a poem.
I like it. Come back and document this. I'll give you some credit for that.
There we go. I said on TomEarl.com.
Yeah. As I once said while sitting with Tom Earl.
I'm like, that's me.
That's me. Shout out to me.
So when did you create your first book?
Well, I've probably had random drafts of books since I first started writing and creating poetry. Yeah. But this first book that was officially published was published in January of 2018.
That was the first one?
The first one ever.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. What's the name of the book?
The book is titled 3032.
Okay. Yeah. And can you tell us a little bit about where the name comes from?
Yeah, so the name is actually the address of the home I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida. It's 3032 West 3rd Street. If you got Google Maps, you can see what it looked like. It looks like it looks like a house. It's a house. It's cool. But there was like, the older I get and the more time that I look back, I'm just like, man, that was the best times ever. And I mean, it was a house in a hood in Jacksonville called Paxson, and wasn't the greatest neighborhood, wasn't the worst neighborhood either, but we had our fair share of just things that happened in the community that happen in communities that are like the hood. But I growing up there was like, it was the best time ever. I lived one house away from my cousins. So I got to hang out with my cousins all the time. It was the only time me, my brother and sister were all living together and growing up together as children, because the older we got, my brother was like maybe like 5 years older. My sister was almost 6 years older than me. So after a certain period of time, it was like they were onto some whole other life things and I was still a little kid. But when we all lived there, we were all children still. So we had like, we gutted out a bush and made it into a fort. Like we would climb trees. We would have water balloon fights.
Nice.
We used to have this little like blackberry tree right by our house. So we'd pick all these blackberries and eat. And then this also was the time where my mother was the most healthy. This is when like she would get out and do stuff, and we could go for bike rides or just do things. And before her illnesses, before her lupus and diabetes and all these things started coming up and really being debilitating for her, this is when we were the picture perfect family. I feel like we were at our happiest at these times. Even though like there was still so much crazy stuff happening around that time, I look back at it now and I only think of the good stuff. So, I was like, first book, some of my first memories, good times. And so the book was a dedication to that home. It was a dedication to growing up in the hood. It was a dedication to my city. And it was also dedicated to my mother.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Because I have the intention of thinking about kids and stuff like that. I bet your mom was so hyped when found out she was going to live right next door. Was it one of her siblings?
No, it was my father's sister.
Okay.
But my mother and my aunt were very close. Yeah.
Because I'm always thinking, my kids could grow up with these people to be like, what?
Yeah.
They're really next. I bet you as adults, they loved that too.
I know they did. I mean, we used to go to their house for dinner. They used to come to our house for dinner. We used to do this all the time. It was just, we were a very close family. And so because I grew up right next to my aunt, my uncle, my cousins, it was like having an extra family.
Yeah.
It was never, sometimes you can feel very insulated and isolated when you're in a family. Like what happens in the house is so outside of what happens in the world, and this just wasn't the case. It felt like we grew up and it felt like a community. Even though it was just us two, just our two families, it still felt like a community, like a tribe. And so I bet they had a great time, because I know there was plenty of times when they're like, go over to your aunt's house, or get out of here, and also just because like it's crazy. Kids traveling around or just walking around their neighborhood, running around the neighborhood, especially when they're by themselves, like it can be really dangerous. And so I know them knowing, well, they're either over there or over here. And we had yards and we had bikes and we were always with someone. So we were never just alone, potentially in danger, even though it was surrounded us at all times. We were together.
That's a blessing.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was. It was.
So would you mind sharing with the good folks listening one of the poems?
Absolutely.
Which one are you going to read? Go ahead, take a look.
And cut. No. I'm going to read a poem called Like a Prayer.
Do you want to give any intro, or do you want to just go into it?
So yeah, there's an added part that this book was really dedicated to, and that's really kind of why I wanted to come on your show and talk about it, and that is because 90% of this book was written in detention facilities in Los Angeles. It was written with students who were incarcerated. A lot of the writing I was doing were based off of workshops that my students at the time were writing in too. So a lot of this book is dedicated to these young kids who are locked up and trying to find a way to channel their grief, their story, and just how they grew up. And so the book is meant to be kind of like a map of redefining your own narrative or retelling your own story. So this poem is dedicated to, working with some of my students and what that atmosphere of a classroom is like.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Cool. Like a prayer. My world is emotion. Smiles, anger, furrowed eyebrows, sharp stares, looks that make you question purpose. Exposed, opened, a tear you can't actualize. The magic in creation, words ignored until bullied onto paper. The things we tag, ball up, or claim are set and cherished like a knockout. We are the waiters, the clock watchers. When is lunch? When is rec? When do I see my judge? When is my early? When do I go home? When do I get put on? The other day, two boys couldn't stop speaking about worship. Called it the almighty 666. The soul. The only thing worth they feel purpose. They don't understand. Praying to a black hole like pouring hope into an abyss. Still, another student is fittingly named Angel. He loves hugs. And when he writes, his smile erupts. And hope becomes a unicorn for a moment.
All right. Yes. We used the word vulnerable earlier.
Yeah.
This seems like emotion on a page.
Mm.
It feels very raw.
Yeah.
And it feels very, like, I mean, that's why you said honest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What was it like for you as you were writing it?
I think for me, one of the things that really jumped out to me in this situation was seeing one of these young boys with with an upside down cross on their forehead. There were 666 tatted across, and just really seeing them like pulled into like the darkest parts of what they're feeling or what they're going through. And I remember that very, very visceral emotion of just feeling just engulfed in negativity and like really darkness, and then really kind of like feeding into it, just being like, yeah, let's be as dark as we can get, let's be as brutal and as ugly as we can get, and just something about what youth does to like pull you to that place. It was really interesting. So when I was working with these young men and saw how like just caught up in it they were, all I could do was just say, well, this is just me documenting, a moment in time, or those times where it's still like you see them snap into being a kid again, where they're like, when's lunch? Like, when am I getting out of here? Like, when do I go home? Like, when am I seeing my judge? Like, these are all legitimate questions that were asked constantly, in classrooms. Yeah. I just remember those feelings, and then seeing them and working with them and knowing like, man, I've been there, bro. And I know that there's nothing I could say that's going to pull you out of it right now. You just have to pull yourself out of it. And what pulled me out of it was writing, was like taking all that anger and all that negativity and putting it on the page, and maybe yelling it on a microphone, or maybe just leaving it there or sharing it with some friends. And that slowly pulled me into a different world, and then got me opportunities to be able to travel and see things. And then that ultimately was something that shifted me from that dark place. So, yeah.
Positive outlet for that processing.
Yeah, I mean, or, even just an outlet, because sometimes, like, you just want to get on the mic and just be, like, yelling, like, profanity as loud as you can. And that might not be perceived as something positive, but it is that vent, so, yeah.
I see this positive. I mean, it's a positive way to release whatever you need to.
Oh, it's definitely better than like assaulting someone or getting yourself locked up again, for sure. I'd much rather them cuss me out than cuss a teacher out, or cuss a probation officer out, or cuss their judge out. People that are not going to be as forgiving as, like, I've had kids cuss me out all the time. I'm like, you're not mad at me though. Like, you're mad because you're here, but yeah. How
did you transition from you're the poet sharing your truth to I now want to coach?
Okay, so like, coaching is a very different thing than like working in the classroom or like teaching in facilities. Coaching is great. I actually love it, because I get to kind of almost be like a surgeon with like poetry. And I think like that is really the meat of what coaching is. Of course, there's a humongous mentoring aspect to it. There's a humongous just really like being there and kind of guiding people aspect. But I think for the most part, it's like, okay, how can we break these things down? How can we edit these words? How can we get to the point quicker? Did you say everything you wanted to say? Do you feel like you're getting to that point? And then just working and wrestling with a poem. And then also, like, especially when we go to like performance poetry, there's a huge aspect of it that I feel is very, there has to be like an opportunity to deal with difficult conversations. To me, that's what slam is really about, is taking these conversations that are extremely difficult, breaking them down to 3 minutes and being like, now let's have a conversation about this, which will dig into deeper things. And so wrestling with these concepts, wrestling with these themes, wrestling with what we're going to write about. To me, that's the thing that like I just love about coaching. And I had that aspect in my life very young. When I first started doing poetry, they were like, we want to put you on a slam team, make you slam. And it was like the second youngest person was like 10 years older than me, you know? So I was just like raised amongst like people who were much more seasoned than me. And so they had much more just tighter foresight for what they wanted to have the poem do. And so that mentality kind of just like guided me in like how I want to see my poems. Like I just have a good ear and a good eye for it.
I mean, you are one of the best. Let's be real.
You know, I don't got that championship ring. I'm like who's somebody that ain't had a championship ring was still dope. I'm like Yao Ming, you know. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of artists who haven't gotten Grammys that absolutely deserve him, and a lot of artists who suck who have gotten them.
Got a gang of Grammys,
especially in hip hop.
Yeah.
Like, what's his name? Who's the white guy?
Macklemore
has more than like Tupac and all these people.
No, is that true?
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Man. Well, that was, back in the 90s, people were still racist towards hip hop.
Still? It was done.
They were more racist then.
More racist, yeah.
Like, we're not giving you a Grammy. Get out of here.
It wasn't pop culture.
It wasn't pop culture, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But all to say, you don't got to have the championship ring to. I mean, you've won a bunch of them.
I've won some bigger stuff. I've won, I've won like the equivalents of like the backyard basketball tournaments.
Well,
but I'd much rather win them tournaments anyway.
Yeah.
Than the other stuff. But but mad respect, and I have had really cool things happen from coaching and done some great things in the NPS communities and BNV, and definitely had some great success at Southern Fried. And I like seeing someone at their highest potential. I like seeing someone who has some piece of work that they're really passionate about, and then really taking it and having it be at its highest potential. It's it's just highest version of it. So those are like some of my favorite things to do, and it's fun. It makes me coaching is a 3-part game. It's a strategy game, it's a performance game, and it's a writing game. And I love all 3 of those things being played together within slam poetry, or just coaching people to be able to give a great performance in general. Alicia and I, my wife, we've been, we started an organization called Slam LA, the Spoken Literature Arts Movement, which actually has nothing to do with slam, but it's so great because we call it slam. But
I love how you love it.
I love it. It's like, it's our subtle shade to the game. But in it, we coach TED Talks, we coach all kinds of stuff in there, and we actually don't do anything gathered around slam poetry, but we might one day. By the time this comes out, we might already be doing it. So,
and I mean, you have done it.
Yeah.
One of the times our paths crossed was y'all were coaching a group of young people who eventually were on Queen Latifah's show.
That's right. Yeah, that was a crazy time too. You had, that was an awesome show.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, so that was actually what brought me out to LA, was working with this organization Get Lit and coaching their young people that year in 2014. And it was so cool. We had 3 young women, 3 young men, and all of them were super hungry. And that's all you really need, is like a group of people who are like super down to put in any amount of work. And I would tell them, and I would tell any team that I work with, is like, like if I had 5 people at a bus stop who could dedicate the time and energy it takes to put a solid team together, like, I'll get them to final stage.
Hey.
Like, I guarantee you I'll get them to final stage. Like we'll do it. Like, I'll help them edit and write and work them poems.
I love it.
Until we get there. And all of those young kids that we did incredible that year. We made finals that year at BNV, and all of their poems got over 1 million views on YouTube. And then they got on the Queen Latifah show, which had like 10 million views, and they got to go to the Hollywood Bowl for 20,000 people to perform with John Legend and Sharon Jones for a tribute to Marvin Gaye. It was just crazy. And and all that, and none of them, except for one, had ever slammed before.
Wow.
You know, so now I just kept telling them, like, you guys show up, you work hard, like, we'll do it.
That's what I'm
talking about. And one of them had went 1 year before, and she had been really wonderful, and was, like, really just kind of working her way through it. But the rest of them were, like, you know, really newbies to it. They all are very, very talented and had obviously incredible potential. But the whole thing with them was, like, y'all show up, y'all practice, y'all work, y'all memorize these poems, and
we'll make it work.
I can give you a good chance that I bet you we'll make final stage. And we did.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think I heard a slight error. You said you came for them, but my understanding is you came out here for me.
That's true. That's true.
Because I think I came in.
Were you here first?
Yeah, just like by like 2 weeks.
Yeah, I was like, I'm going. Tom left. I'm leaving. I can't do this
Tom's
anymore.
not in Florida?
I was like, what? All the sunshine just left? I'm going. I'm out of here.
But you had just come from Europe, correct?
Yeah, I had just finished touring and teaching and coaching overseas with this organization called Leeds Young Authors, which were just a wonderful, wonderful group of people. Shouts out to Khadija Ibrahim, Saju, Mims, everybody, man. Like, just so much love to the family out there. And they had me basically in like a residency coaching a few of their schools for like a citywide slam that they were doing. But then I was also coaching their youth poetry team to go to Brave New Voices that year in 2013, and they did great. They were just wonderful, and got to tour through Europe, got to do a lot of shows, and go to Abu Dhabi and see Paul D, and it was just really, really beautiful, man, and just had a good time. But yeah, once that wrapped up, I was just kind of like in Chicago at the end of Brave New Voices that year, and I think it was 2013. And was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. And ran into the founder of Get Lit, who I had known for some years, Diane Luby Lane. And she was like, hey, you want to coach our team in LA? I was like, yeah, I'll go to LA. I don't care. And here I am.
Rest is history.
Yeah. And then like the weather was too good to leave. So I'm here now.
There we go. So would you mind reading another one of your powerful poems from 3032 for us? And could you show the good folks out there a picture? I know some folks are on the podcast. They're not seeing it. Here comes Slowly. Do 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 do. What's the theme song for it?
Poetry. Oh.
I was like, what are we gonna do?
This is my book. It's 3032. It almost looks exactly like this. It's got pages in it, and this one's a very special one because it comes with a hair tie.
What do you mean? It almost looks exactly like this?
It does.
I was like,
you'll get one that looks just like this.
Almost exactly.
Donate today.
So let's read a poem, and then let's jump super deep into what you mean by donate today, what it's going to go to, all of those kind of things.
Okay, cool.
So let's read one more.
Sure.
What are you going to read for us?
This one is called Knowing Loss.
Knowing Loss.
Yeah.
Do you want to do any intro, or are we going right in?
Yeah, I can do a short intro.
Okay.
Yeah. So, this book, this, like I said, is dedicated to my students. And, LA's a tough place, man. And it has a lot of really heavy gang culture in it, for those who don't know. And so a lot of my students are not just in and out of the facilities, but a lot of them lose their lives out in the streets. And a lot of them are very, very young, under 21, under 20 sometimes. And this was a poem that was written in dedication to a few students that had gotten killed within like a month of each other. And just over the years, I think the number is pretty high. It's definitely over the teens at this point. So just a lot, man. And you develop these relationships with these kids, and it's not just one-offs. I end up working with a lot of these kids for months at a time. So when something intense happens, like losing them or them losing their lives, it hits pretty hard. So this poem is dedicated to that.
Let's do it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Knowing loss, heavy as a gun, a stack of poems, enough lead to make a bullet. His name scribbled like a tag, a manifesto for survival. Incarceration plays the clock and calendar like an uptight conductor. We record our music and become our favorite song. Stories about dreams, about friends gone too early and family missed. Yet all the melodies sound like warnings. All the music glows like an exit sign, an ending come too soon. Before 20 years grows into a memory. Before owning a car becomes a burden, or renting an apartment and turning it to sanctuary. Before leaving his city and letting happiness partner guilt. I archive all the hymn I can find. Let my mind drift to apologies. If these poems about change still allow him to slip away, have I not failed? He, another coat to carry. Another teenager gone, leaving guilt as a sole survivor. I neglect myself as a coward suicide. How the importance of living gets tied to this ministry of work. How every day is a tug at the rope tightening around my fortitude. Ask me why he was locked up. Why I found him in a camp. Ask if his grades were good. If he was gang affiliated. Then take the bus home to his house at night. How does one survive without affiliation? When the cold becomes a countdown to your annual trigger, does death make change impossible? Will hurt always be the loudest relative at our gatherings? Is trauma the only gift Los Angeles grandfathers its educators? Will all my children be ghosts?
As I was just saying to you, it's almost like one of those poems that's hard to snap for. Almost like it's like a moment of silence.
Yeah, we say like there's all kinds of ways you can interact with the poem. You could do like the snaps. You could do like I like the grandma's home cooked meal. That's definitely one of the poems where you're like at least I do. You can't really for yourself. It's tacky.
So tell me about the part where it says I neglect myself or something like that, like a coward's. The ministry of this work. I forget the exact line.
Yeah, so and I'll read the exact line to know exactly where we're going for it. But
there it is.
I neglect myself as a coward, suicide. How the importance of living gets tied to this ministry of work. Yeah, sometimes it's depressing, and it especially if you deal with depression, it can be very triggering. And for me, I would just hold a lot of self accountability for what happens to them when they leave, and then of course, if you're an educator and you've ever lost someone, you know you're constantly going into maybe I could have done this better, or maybe I could have invested more time or been more patient on certain times, or just, did something that might have deterred this direction they were headed in. And so for me, a lot of my depression and a lot of the self infliction that I would have would be to just neglect myself, not sleep and not eat right, and not take care of myself the way I needed to. And then that would be just really bad as far as like how you want to give more, because then you don't have more to give. And so this relationship of taking care of myself or not taking care of myself was just directly tied into the work that I was doing. So, and it was what it felt like just a coward suicide. Like, I'm not going to just do it outright. I'm just going to live shitty until I don't anymore. And it's a dark poem, and it's a dark thought within the poem. But yeah, that's where my mind went when thinking about, losing these students, and especially in the moment of just dealing with it. It was very much like a snapshot.
Mm-hmm. My mind, before you even read that line, went to that place. Because for a lot of my career, I worked with young people who had experienced trauma. And then I started to work with trained educators to work with young people who are underserved or experienced trauma, abuse, or neglect. And I know that secondhand trauma does affect us. When we hear what these young people go through.
Oh, yeah.
Or when one of our young people gets hurt. Because we care.
Yeah.
It's a unique kind of work that it requires your emotions and your vulnerability and your empathy And we're empathetic people to begin with, which is why, I mean, you're brilliant. You could go work for like a Fortune 500 company, be making millions of dollars, but instead you're like, I'm going to do this kind of work. So you're already an empathetical person doing something that's hard for empaths to do.
Yeah.
So when you said it, it was like, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. And it's, it's tough, man, especially, you use especially, like, I have a drop of empathic ability to me, and I say a drop because, anybody that's ever talked to me about empaths know that, like, I feel the only true empath I've ever really known was my mother. And the way that she dealt with it and channeled her abilities were monumental, and I've rarely seen it in that capacity. But so yeah, I have a drop of it, and it's good. It's a great skill to have when you're trying to have a direct relationship with someone. But then it can be a double-edged sword when something happens. Yeah.
Do you have any self-care rituals that you do to take care of yourself?
Yeah. I've been I chant a lot. So a good friend of mine, and poet MC named George Yamazawa, got me into chanting pretty regularly. The Lotus Sutra with some of the Buddhist community. And then I just, I have lots of like herbs, Palo Santo and, sage and things like that I burn and just various ways to decompress. I've been working on a video game series called The Poetic Gamer.
Ooh.
Where it's actually we sit and we talk about the intersection of poetry, mental health, self-care, and video games.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I play a lot of video games, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So tell me about the vision you have for 3032.
So, one aspect or one vision of it was that, I wanted the book to be able to be a little bit of my mother's energies and, a little bit of my student stories and a little bit of my city's story to be able to travel around the world, right? And share with people that had it. It's become something that has been really, really just a focal point in my career and my life, is getting this book in the hands of people that I think it can help. And the main place that I feel it doing that is within these detention facilities. So I've, since the book came out, I've been bringing, stacks of books into the facility and just giving it to the young people, letting them see it, letting them see my face on the back and being like, look, you're sitting right next to a published author whose work has traveled around the world in various capacities. And then seeing how that affects them, to be like, oh, wow, like, you publish your poems, like, word, could you help me publish my poems? Which is usually like the next things that they'll ask, or they'll say, oh, that's so dope, like, well, do you make money off of this, or like, what is it like having a published book? And then all these questions start coming out, and then of course the answer is like, yeah, I'll totally help you, that's what we're doing here.
Yeah.
And so we've been trying to help these young people publish their own books, tell their own stories, and just be inspired enough to do it. And with the organization I've been working with, Street Poets, we've published about, I want to say about 15 to 20 different chapbooks from the organizations that we work in that are all poetry written from the perspective of these young people, written by these young people. So that's really, really powerful. And it's something to write like a couple poems and put it into like a chapbook that's like an anthology. It's different to be, pushed and inspired to create your entire book, which is what I hope this book will do. So,
Poetry.
Drum roll. The goal is that I would like to give away 3,032 copies of my book 3032. Starting with incarcerated youth and expanding to underprivileged and underutilized organizations that will be able to give them to their students, to their kids throughout California, throughout this country. And I've started a campaign to raise $15,000 to do it. Each book is usually at $15 a pop, and then with shipping and handling, it can be around $20. I've been able to work a deal to get each book at $2.50 a pop. Yeah, and then with shipping and handling, another $2.50 to send it anywhere in the world. So $5 puts a book in a young kid's hand. And I've started a campaign to raise it. I'll be breaking even. If I break even, I'll be breaking even. It's, I'm only doing everything at cost, so I don't want this to be a fundraiser about me making money. This isn't about me making money. It's about giving these kids a book that will hopefully spark something in them to tell their own story, to reshape their own narratives, and use it as a tool, as a guideline or a map to do it. So how can people support? So right now the Kickstarter is active. It is July 6th as we're filming. Don't know when it'll drop.
July 15th.
July 15th. So you have 4 days left to donate to this campaign. That's it. 4 days. On midnight on July 20th, it'll be done. And we will either be shipping books out to kids in the following months or telling them that we weren't able to raise the money. So you can help. You can help by buying one book. You can help by donating a classroom worth of books. You can help by donating for an entire site. Hopefully we are very close to our goal. Right now we are not very close. We are close, but not very, very close. We're only got about 9,000 or so left to raise out of our 15,000, which is decent. So hopefully by the time we get to this 4-day mark on the 15th, which is today, because you're watching, we're very close, and your money can be something that can boost us right over. So every penny helps. If you can't donate, that's okay. Send it to somebody who might be able to, and you can just share the campaign, get the word out to as many people as possible. Contact your local libraries, tell them that you would like to have this book in your library. Different ways to bring it to your community or to bring this work to your community. If you're a teacher, if you're an educator, it comes with a 5-week curriculum that you can actually use in your classrooms. That is Common Core, project-based learning aligned. Boom. So, you can help in a lot of ways. And one is just by donating and spreading the word.
So it's an all or nothing campaign.
Yes.
So what is the lowest tier for somebody who's like, I'm a little low on funds, but I want to support? What's the lowest tier they can enter at?
$5.
$5. Y'all.
$5.
You can afford $5.
$5 for a cup of coffee.
Yes.
A cup of coffee. Not even, a couple gallons of gas. That's it.
Yeah. What are you going to do with a couple gallons of gas anyways?
Go buy coffee? Get out of here. Get out of here.
Okay, $5, done. So is there a perk for $5 other than knowing you're doing something good?
The $5 perk is you get a book.
You get a book?
Or you can send a book to somebody.
Oh, so some people actually buy a book, but it doesn't donate? They keep the book?
They could keep the book.
Don't keep the book.
Or they can donate.
Donate the book.
It's totally your call.
We're donating. Buy the book later, after the campaign. This is the donate. Yeah. Okay, so what's the next tier that they enter?
Next tier is $10. Is a book for you or a friend or for somebody else. So you get 2 books. Then you get from 10 to 20, from 20, I think like 25, 50, 100, 150, 200, 250. There's all the way up to like a $4,000 tier.
What gets you a classroom?
$100 will put 20 books in a classroom.
So, Celebration Academy listeners, as you know, I provide coaching. One coaching session with me is $350. If you buy the $100 tier, you will get a free coaching session with me. So not only do you get a $250 discount, but you're going to get to support a whole classroom, and at the same time, you're going to get the benefit of we're going to get to work together. So if you're been on the fence about working with me, don't buy a coaching package. Instead, buy $100 worth of books, and then I'll hook you up, send me the receipt, and we'll do a one-on-one session together.
Wow.
Is there a $50 one?
There's a $50 one.
What does $50 do?
Let's see. What does $50 do? So $50 gets you 10 books.
10 books?
10 books.
And what does 10 books do? Tell me about the impact 10 books would have.
10 books does a lot. 10 books can also support a smaller classroom. Some of the juvenile facilities, their classrooms can be anywhere between like 5 to 15 kids. So this gets you in helping out one of those classrooms directly.
That's awesome.
So you'll be able to support a group of young people right there. And then, the way that we want to do this is that we don't want to just put books in libraries in these facilities that kids only get to use and utilize when they're incarcerated. We want them to be able to have this book signed directly to them and in their hands for them to have forever. And so, 10 books gets you that immediate in their hands, and then the more books that we can offer these sites, the more they can stock them in their libraries, the more they can just keep books for the new students that enroll, because they're constantly incarcerating young people. So there's always a chance for another young person to experience this for years to come. So the more that you donate, the more books you in there, the longer the impact and the longer the effect. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Let's add a perk. What's the perk already that they get?
So $50 is called our Camp Kirby tier, which is a facility in mid-city, which some of these kids are sometimes the most heavily medicated in the county. But you're gonna get 5 signed copies of this book. You're gonna get your name and a thank you weekly post. You'll get a 30-minute online session to edit any poems you have for you or a friend.
With you?
With me, you get a 30-minute editing session with your boy. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
I'll put some tens, I'll pimp your poems, pimp your ride, I won't pimp your poems. I'll pimp your ride to make your poems look. Yeah, just you get a session. God dang it! All right. But the tiers go all the way up. You've got a $75 one, which is similar to the $50, except you add 5 more books. $100 tier, same situation. Once you get into these higher tiers, you start getting offered the 5-week curriculum involved with it. And again, maybe you're not an educator, maybe you're just somebody who likes poetry and wants to bring it more into your community. I'm thinking of like the open mics and places around the country that have regular open mics, but not really access to quality workshops or facilitation to help their areas grow. Yeah. And so I want to be able to give these books also to open mics, to be able to give this to all parts of the community that it fits. So, we're only starting with 3,032 books, which is a lot, but also is not a lot when you're talking about spreading it around the country. Yeah. So every dollar over the amount that I'm trying to raise is also going to go to adding more and more books. So if we can give away 4,000, we can give away 5,000, we can give away 10,000 books, cool. And it's just a jump off where there's a lot more bigger processes and bigger ideas to have this just kind of be a funnel for everybody's books to get out and start helping these young people. But it starts here.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, man.
Let me add some of my benefits to the listeners for some of those tiers. If you get anything up to $100, because $100 or more, you'll get a free coaching session. Anything, even $5 up to the $100, you're going to be able to join us for a free month of Inner Power Business Coaching, which is $150 a month. So if you join anything up to then, you get $5. If you get one book, you can come join us for a whole month and be a part of our community, in addition to the tiers you're giving. And the most important thing is it feels good to give. It really does. It's basically an opportunity to know that one thing in Islam we talk about is that there are only a few things that when you die continue giving you blessings, and one of them is charity. So we say in Islam that if you pay for a book for $5 and that book goes to that kid, any good deeds that kid does, you get the karma for it too.
Ooh, you hear that?
That's what Islam believes. So
that's major.
So the book you send, more books you send, if any of those kids does anything nice ever because of that book, ever opens a door for someone, does something nice, you get that good karma added to your karma field. So if that doesn't motivate you, on top of all these other benefits you get, then you are a terrible person. No,
maybe you're not into helping out kids. Maybe that's not your thing. It's okay. Maybe you're more of like a, I don't know.
A candy stealer.
Yeah, maybe you like watching Fox News. I don't know.
Oh!
Maybe that's your thing.
Oh. This is amazing. I wish you
Thank you so much.
Success.
I really
much
appreciate
blessings. It's been an honor to have you here.
The honor is all mine.
Let's close with one more poem.
Yes, sir.
Which one are you gonna do?
So this one is called Challenger. This poem is named after not just one of the perks or one of the tiers, but actually one of the largest facilities in Southern California. It's named after the Challenger space shuttle that was a disaster in 1986.
Is this a slam poem? Kinda. The first time I heard this poem was February 2014.
You're dating me. You're dating my poems.
You, and what was her name?
2014 to February.
Maybe I'm mixing up years, but we did a triple feature. Me, you, and one other person at
You're right. Yup.
Yes.
Yep. And that's actually how I started working in facilities like that. Was stuff like that. And that was actually a different poem.
Okay.
But it got me the job so that I could go and do work.
Does that poem start with like something?
Something. It definitely starts with something.
But it was named after a spaceship that exploded.
Yeah.
Is that how that poem starts?
That's how this poem starts, yeah.
Oh, but it's not the same poem?
I don't know. I don't think it is. I know the event you're talking about.
Okay.
And then I don't think I had that poem then.
Because you were working there by then.
No, I hadn't. That was what got me the gig. That open mic, that feature that I almost bailed on.
Oh, I thought you'd been working there by then.
No, that I just kind of met them then.
Oh.
And then that was kind of like my in. I was still writing about working in facilities and detention centers, but it wasn't about Challenger specifically because I hadn't started there just yet.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, enough of me. Let's do the poem.
Cool. All right. This is called Challenger. Last week, two of my favorite students wrapped their knuckles around each other. Now in class, when we're aggravated or upset, we do push-ups or we listen to really cool beats. The other day, on my sign-in sheet, in the comment section, usually reserved for the principal, one of my boys wrote, "Great class. It was the best part of my day." Now, at the Challenger Memorial Juvenile Detention Center, a youth prison named after a space shuttle that exploded, a failed mission. There's a dog pound at the front gates. You can hear whining and barking as your tires roll through gravel. In the yard, you can see the lights from the state penitentiary directly behind. Most of my boys joke and say that this will be their next step, but in my class, I show them poems, always my favorite and always the powerful. I tell them there's a future in words. I show them my past, the dirt I crawled through, the voice I stumbled on, the same voice we can find searching the right conversations. We talk of memories, acknowledge and agree that we are the sum of what we remember. Their growth is my process, and I love to watch them blossom. Each poem, a petal forcing its way from a bud, a little more assured each time, each step, a little more confident than the last. I don't just try to teach poetry to kids. I try to teach them how to walk in their own skin. I try to teach them how to own their skin when they walk. Sometimes I stand in front of a classroom and my students look like abandoned homes in the neighborhood the city has forgotten. I give them notebooks. I give them tool belts and talk them into believing that anyone can be a carpenter. I say these words are nails, these poems are houses. Build it carefully because someone might need to live here. I look them in the eyes and say the sentences you need to focus on do not end with a gavel, they end with a period. Let me show you how to make them with your own hands. Your story is important, so write it down. And they do. Some laugh, some cry. I say it's okay. Our emotions are like lightning bugs, and if we keep them bottled, they will die. And a person who doesn't feel is just a photograph, and you are worth so much more than 1,000 words. You are an ocean of confessions begging for an out. There is a key in your every syllable. The right combination can unlock dreams. I tell them to dream, then edit. I tell them a rough draft is one of the rare times in life you actually get a do-over. I tell them to wrap themselves in their stories. Don't get wrapped up in money, because then you'll become a hater, and haters get halitosis, and that's chronic bad breath. I tell them, I don't know why, but it feels true. To feel for your truth like a switch when engulfed in all life's dark, that this universe loves honesty. So don't hold your tongue or your punches. Their process is my growth. And the only time I don't feel guilty prostituting my emotions for strangers, I tell them everything someone told me once. You can be great. Each poem, a petal forcing its way from a bud, a little more assured each time, each step, a little more confident than the last. I tell them I love them, because most of the time, they never hear that. I tell them no matter what society has shown them, no matter what their judge has told them, that they are not a failed mission. To me.
Hey, I love the line that's something like, I love to watch them grow. It's what is my passion, or something like that. I'm butchering all of your lines.
No, their growth is my process, and I love to watch them blossom. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
The way we like to conclude is, first of all, 2 questions. First one is, as you heard me say, this is my year of grace. What is grace to you?
Grace is patience. Grace is understanding. And empathy. Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Where can folks reach out to you to tell you how awesome they are, and where can they go to support this?
So my name is Matthew Cuban.
It is.
You can find me on all social medias under the name Matthew Cuban. And there you will find links to my campaign, links to my work, and ways you can support.
Yes, indeed. TomReal.com/Matthew, 2 T's in Matthew, correct?
Yes, sir.
MATTHEW, TomReal.com/Matthew is where you're going to find all the social media links and the Kickstarter link to go and support 3032 to get 3,032 books into the hands of young people. Please, 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 from the bottom of my heart, it would mean the world to me if you are at all a fan of the celebration and what I'm trying to do here. You know, I don't bring people on and we promote to you like crazy. You know, I'm all about adding that free value and never really asking anything in return. So this is one of those times where I'm going to cash in those chips. So if I've ever provided any value to you in any way, this would be an opportunity, if you were to donate to what Matthew's doing, that I would just be so grateful to you, and I would feel so thankful for that. So please, and don't wait, because you only have a couple days. So do it right now. Tell your boss to screw off. Go on your phone real quick. Pay for it right there. TomReal.com/Matthew or TomReal.com/blog. You'll find the link right there. Next time you're going to the bathroom, pay for it right then. Like, get it done now. Don't wait. Please support what Matthew's doing. This has been awesome.
It's been my pleasure, Tom. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I
Thank
appreciate you, brother.
Here's our closing ritual. What is your invitation to those listening? What's your invitation for them to think about, to do, to become? What is your invitation?
So every single person on the planet has a story worth telling and a story worth writing. So many people are healed and find their way to healing through hearing stories or telling their stories. Find a way to heal yourself. Find a way to heal the others around you. Tell your story. Write it. It's definitely worth reading. And I promise you, if you write it and you send it to me, I'll read it.
There you go.
I'll show love to it, and I'll be happy to, and I look forward to. So write. Tell your story. Reshape your narrative. Be the person you want to be, because you're already beautiful and you're already great.
I mean, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, hug! And to all of those who have joined us today, I'm wishing you peace and blessings.
Peace and blessings.
Thank you. One more thing. I'd love to continue the conversation. Feel free to join me at TomEarl.com/join. Subscribe below, or let's connect on social media. Tom Earl Artist. Thanks again for watching.